out the jacket cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get about your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot and I can't be beat. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out.
Welcome everyone to episode 61 of Agencyphonics. I'm here today with the wonderful, delightful Tina Keeble from Valiant Design. More about Tina in a second. Just quickly, first of all, some housekeeping. Just a gentle, kind reminder to everyone that the audiobook is now live. You can listen to the dulcet tones of Pete and myself, both with COVID, croaking our way through an audiobook. But all joking aside, there is some fantastic bonus content in there. I know many agency founders and leaders prefer audiobooks over being creatives over the written word. So just check out Audible or Amazon or Apple Books. It's on as well. So that's the first message. The second one is to say that we've also launched Agency Coin. Now, Agency Coin is, we've kind of tokenized our community. And what that essentially means is that we've built a loyalty system into the community now. So if you own Coin, you'll be able to pick up a load of benefits, access to exclusive content, events, and also some really nice rates off some of our mastermind groups, 1 month free as well, even a free copy of the audiobook, actually, if you hold Coin. So if you go over to rally.io, that's RALL.io rather than rally bikes for those of you from the 70s and 80s, rally.io/creator/agency, and you can read more about everything there. So I've got a bit of background. I don't know whether that's me or you, Tina, but I can hear a little bit of background today.
Ooh, I think it's quite quiet here. I do have a fan.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's the fan.
Yeah, not a personal fan, just a mechanical.
You've actually brought your own entourage with you to celebrate. Is that right? So, sorry. So, yeah, you might need to mute between talking. Just watch that background noise because it might be a little bit interrupt the podcast experience. That's all my intros done. Thank you as always to Dan Archer and Abby behind the scenes for making these shows happen, getting everyone in the right place at the right time, getting the technology to happen. And Tina, at last, you are here.
I am indeed.
It's a hot day, hence the fan. I'm really, really, really struggling with the heat. So I'm actually working outside and it's still really humid. So hopefully neither of us will fall asleep halfway through this podcast.
Stepping out of my comfort zone, both in temperature and podcast terms.
Oh, that's fine. So listen, the reason you're here today is very recently we had a really, really wonderful conversation where you had shared with me a story. So you had your largest client had been, just to summarize, had been the company had been taken over and the new owner had come into the organization, and you were slightly concerned that you might lose the business. And listen, and I really wanted you to come on the podcast today and share the story, because for me, I feel like, with the new generation of agencies coming through, there's still a lot to learn really about the importance of creativity and innovation in everything that you do around your business. And you really used your creativity to make sure that client was going to then still continue to work with you despite the takeover. So, Tina.
Okay. Right. So I have to say, though, I was listening to some of the podcasts before this just to see what other people were talking about. And I've forgotten the girl's name, but the amazing woman from Rise at 7.
Yep. Carrie Rose.
Carrie Rose, yeah. And I was listening to what she does, and what we did in this tactic is what she's basically doing for a living. So I think she's awesome. So what did we do? So we were working for a technology business, and they were our largest client. We've been working with them for many years. They started off as a smallish business locally doing SAP consultancy. And there was some acquisitions and a bit of a turnaround that was going on. And we knew the team there so well. All of the marketing team had a big marketing team. We used to go out for drinks and dinners and things like that. So it was that perfect sort of client agency relationship. And lots of people think that B2B branding, marketing can be dull. It doesn't need to be at all. It depends how you approach it. So what did we do? We heard that this new chap was coming in, that he was a South African guy, was supposed to have no time for anyone. And we were told that we had 15 minutes to impress him. 15 minutes. This is like 5 years of work that we've done for this business. And we've got 15 minutes in which to impress him. So we got together and it felt a bit like doing an apprentice challenge or something. And it can be really uniting. If you've got the time, it can be a really uniting thing to do, to come up with imaginative ideas. So we thought, well, what can we do? We've got 15 minutes. How do we make Valiant be unforgettable? How can we make sure he realizes that we can be super creative? So because we had a good relationship with the team over at Diagonal/Morse, we first of all got in touch with his PA. So, and she was really sweet and really helpful, brilliant. PAs are amazing. So she helped us learn a lot more about him. So then we got all of our marketing friends that were there on board as well, so that they wanted to continue to work with us. So they thought it was in their interest as well. So what we did was we found out, where was he going to be that day? Where was he going to come from to come to us? And what was he expecting? And we just dug deep. So exactly the same way that you'd start when you're going to a client for the first time, for the first project, and you're doing that discovery bit, we did that. So what can we do to actually make him remember? So we thought the only way to really leave an impression is to have like touch points, like brand touch points at every single part of his journey. So that's what we plotted out. So we worked out.
Recap here a little bit. Like, he was based, was it about sort of 15-20 minute drive away?
Yeah.
So he was going to drive to your office, but only for 15 minutes. So he was going to spend 15 minutes driving to meet you for 15 minutes and then go back again. Yeah. So, okay.
And I think he did sort of end up staying for longer, but I think it was put in because it was, I want you to do something really succinct. He's a CEO of a big business. He's been brought in to turn that business around. Parts of it maybe weren't doing so well, I'm not sure. But he was brought in by an equity business, I think, to shift everything. So he's a busy man. I get that. So what can we do? I think anything with a bit of humor often helps you remember something, and just making the most of all of that time we had. So we knew what journey he would do. There's only 2 directions that he could get to us. So we did have to take the chance that we were pretty sure it would be that direction, helped by his PA, who gave him the directions to get to us. So perfect. So the first thing we did was, we had a delivery company that used to deliver stuff for us, a courier sort of company regularly. So we asked if we could borrow their van, and a driver. And then a signage company that we've used before, we pulled them in. This chap's name is Mike. So on one side of the van, we put going somewhere nice, Mike. And we got that van parked outside their car park, so he couldn't actually leave until he saw that van blocking the way. So we knew his car. So we had like walkie-talkies and mobiles and everything, so we could communicate. And he came out into his car, drove to the exit, couldn't get past until our van moved forward. So I guess he could have seen that and thought, coincidence, but what a coincidence. As our van moved forward, he pulled out. We made sure that it pulled forward at the right time, so no one else could get in there. And on the back it said, "We do know where you're going, Mike." So we're hoping that he might just think, oh, this is a bit of a coincidence, or maybe there's something in it. And then we did get arranged for our van to go a different route as he came over to us. So then we did some things which I don't know are necessarily legal. So,
I knew this was coming.
So we, when people are coming to us, they often come down a local road or go up a slip road, and there's obviously road speed signs. So we did sort of commandeer those, and instead of it saying 30 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, we put like 3 miles to Valiant, 2 miles to Valiant, see you at the Dairy Studios. So each little plot of his journey had a little touch point about us. But then I think our little piece de resistance was outside our offices here. We have a little bridge that goes over the motorway, and we happened to find some like roadworks cones out and about.
Find them, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, some of the team did, probably late on a Friday night somewhere. Anyway, we got enough, and we set up a fake roadworks on the bridge. And he was coming over sort of mid-afternoon. There wasn't much traffic around at the time. And we got a couple of students from the Surrey University and the chap who had been doing some building work at my house. And we set everything up. We had some tools there and things. They had a branded boiler suits on. And we had one of those sort of, the stop-go lollipop signs.
Yeah.
So we had one of those, and it just said stop. And so he pulled up in his very nice Jag, and by this time we had one of the guys from the studio was there, and we had an old Polaroid camera. So we took some photos of him, and he was laughing at this point. Brilliant. So the two students that we'd roped in, they turned around, and one of them had MI on their back and the other KE, so it said Mike again. And then when we were ready for him and they'd notified us, we turned the stop sign round, well, my builder did, turned the stop sign round, and it said, off you go, Mike. So he drove round into the little lane into our studios, and then at about 20-yard, rubbish at distances, 20-yard intervals, we had little things. We said, oh, it's a latte, isn't it, with 1 sugar? And then we created his own parking spot with a really nice message, said, welcome to Valiant. And that was his little experiential journey. And yet he rocked up to the door, just laughing. He said, I don't need to know anything else. Went into the meeting room, and we chatted about South Africa, wine, sport, rugby, and nothing to do with creativity whatsoever. And we won the work.
Amazing. What an incredible story. And I just thought that would set the tone so well for today's podcast, because I think, there's a couple of things that really spring out there. First of all, sometimes in business, we all take ourselves a bit too seriously. And sometimes, for him, especially being a heavyweight CEO coming in to do a turnaround, and, sometimes it is a bit serious. So to be able to just play with that, but also for you just doing the insights and the research and the creativity to be able to come up with something that would disrupt his journey and I guess ultimately create a memorable experience, right? He probably never will forget you guys as a result of that. So
yeah, and I think so when once we'd finished our chat, we had found out like his favorite bottle of wine, his favorite vineyard in South Africa. So we got a bottle of red wine and put the Polaroids in there so that he would take them with him. But what's really interesting is, I mentioned earlier about your B2B doesn't have to be boring, and that his entrance into that business was to make the company a bit more disruptive against what other SAP consultancies were doing at the time. And it triggered a whole chunk of creative work that I'm not sure would have happened had we not done that, because it gave him the confidence to give their marketing team a sort of remit to say, okay, what can we do to win this RFP? So when they got new RFPs coming in, and I know that especially now, many of them are super controlled and they're digital and there's nothing extra you can do. But sometimes there is, and in those situations, and you're up against some, huge global businesses, we did some really quirky things for them to deliver, in how those RFPs were delivered to the offices, and I know that on some of them they got shortlisted, and that the decisions were made so quickly. There's no way that the recipients had read all of the detail in that RFP, so they were basing that on what they were seeing at that moment, and it made them memorable. So I don't think that work would have come. It would have just been the standard stuff we were doing had we not sort of showed him what we were capable of.
And as much as all us agencies are, it's important for us to demonstrate our capabilities. We are service businesses, we are people businesses, and we all know that people, consumers, and from a B2B perspective, businesses, there isn't still an emotive element to purchasing, right? And I think I was actually quoting this morning in a board meeting, and it's a guy called Robert Solomon, who wrote a book called The Art of Client Services, and he wrote this wonderful phrase, which I think actually I really resonated with me after sort of 20 years of being in this business, which was, I used to think that doing a great job led to more great work, but over time I learned that it was a great experience. It was a great client relationship that led to better work, because the better and closer the relationship is, the more likely they are to basically put you onto, to trust you and to give you an opportunity to try something a bit different and take risks with you, right? Because they trust you. So Tina, can I just ask you just to put your oh, it's gone now. How weird's that? It was almost like we had alien invasion happening while I was talking to you then.
Oh.
Maybe I thought it was the fan coming in. Don't worry. So, listen, Tina, we skipped over really the who you are and what you do part, because I really wanted to get straight into the story today. But can you give us a bit of background? How did you get started with Valiant? And tell us all about Valiant, where you are and the services you do, where your kind of specialities are.
Okay. So I've always been in this industry. I'm a creative, still learning a lot about business, because I obviously didn't intend to, I had never had an intention to set up a business. It started because I was at a point where I'd worked with a number of agencies and had a great time. The final one I was at, I had less of a great time at. And I think the chap, we'd started a business, I'd been there at the beginning of this agency, and that it grew very quickly. And he said to me one day, "Yeah, but you're a creative, you'd never be able to run a business." Okay. A little bit of competitiveness might have come out then. But I still wasn't sure, and I didn't really know how you went about it, other than sort of scaling up freelance, which I know like your freelance guys on Cactus, are looking at now. But there's a chap who kept offering me a job, but he was in the sort of sophisticated, I suppose, point of sale industry, but there was still a lot of that cardboard shit going on, which I'm too much of a brand snob to have wanted to get into sort of buy one, get one free, signage and all of that. So he wanted me to be his creative director, and I didn't want to do it, but the job offer was getting ridiculous. And then, so I went traveling, went around South Africa and Southern African countries for a while, came back. Sometimes, well, maybe this is just me. I came back and really fancied a beer on a Monday night. Nobody comes out on a Monday night except this one guy that I knew. And I told him not to offer me another job. And he said he had a different proposition. This is a chap called Martin. So he helped me use the infrastructure he had in his business. And we set up the company as part of his group, which was called Marketplace. And then after a few years, probably actually 2 years, his business had grown, my business had grown. And so we had to move out into where we are now, but we've expanded and taken over the whole building now.
So you're based in Farnham, and you have got these are they converted dairy? It's a wonderful small barn. I mean, I say small, but quite a big barn collection now. But I do remember visiting you. It must have been 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, I think it must have been around. Do you remember Crop Farnham? Do you remember?
Yeah. Was that the event that was going?
At the Mulberry, yes.
Yeah, the Mulberry, yes.
Yeah, and you couldn't get to the
guys do that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they got a lot of creatives to come down and speak, didn't they?
Yeah, and you couldn't get to the bar quick enough, and I was at the bar, so you asked me to get your beer.
You remember it.
There
was a joke in there somewhere.
anyway, just so I had the business marketplace. It was brilliant that the guys helped me and supported me in getting that going. And then they were just not involved in the business, but they had a shareholding. And then their part of the business, the point of sale part, was being acquired by a large Dutch business. So because of the perceived competitive advantage, what's the word I need? Yeah. They said I had to they had to exit from my business too. So I bought them out, and I bought them out in 2009 when the business was valued at its highest. Oh. And then the next year it plummeted. And so it was really tough. That was a really tough time. And people often have a perception, don't they, from the outside, of people just always doing well. And it was really hard. And I think I really lost my confidence as well, because I had to lay half my team off. And I just think it's quite relevant with what we're potentially heading into now. I had to lay half my team off, and I swore that I'd never do that again, because it was the most stressful thing I've ever had to face. But it enabled me to start Valiant. And in that year, or a couple of years after, we changed the name from Marketplace to Valiant. And my granny Valiant, for anybody who doesn't know, and I know most people know this story, she was in Farnham, and she hung on until she was nearly 100. And I told her before she died that we were called the company Valiant after her.
Oh, what a lovely story.
Yeah, and now it's really interesting. And my granny had 3 daughters, so there are no Valiants left in our family. And when we first, although it's not my surname, when we first called ourselves Valiant, it felt a bit weird. You know, would you have called your agency Gallagher at any time?
No, there is an agency called Gallagher, so
a very big one.
Yeah.
So it felt a bit weird to start with, and then over the years, especially now with the team that's here, I just feel we are so much our name. We really are Valiant. So I love it, and I love that. I got the opportunity to buy them out, and that we recovered confidence, recovered clients and things like that. And everything's great.
And like you are, I mean, obviously I don't live too far away from where your business is, but I went to get a bottle of wine the other day from the local wine merchant, Cavis, and he was like, "Oh, you know Tina Keeble," and it was like, cracked me up. And then it turns out you've done their branding, and which is very lovely, by the way. And then he took so much pride in giving me his business card, which he said to me were the most expensive business cards ever. But then I remembered you'd given me your card once, and I remember thinking how amazing your business card was. And I kind of, in the back of my head, I knew what I was expecting when I received the card from him. And I think it's actually still in my wallet now, because it's almost like a work of art. I can't really take it out and do anything with it. So, but you do quite a lot of brand projects and brand experience projects, don't you? I noticed that even one of the gins in that wine store, is it Twisted Nose? Is that what they're called? Look, here's a bottle. Here's one. You created the gin brand as well. So you're doing brand and brand experience work. Is that typically what you do?
Yeah. So we're a branding business, and what's been quite interesting over the last few years, I think, is most people seem to digress, or certainly move into brand and digital, or digital, whereas we've actually retracted back to branding, because there's still a need for it. It's so important. And although I think Twisted Nose, in a very localized way, has made us famous, and well, maybe a bit more than that in some places. In fact, even in Oslo, where I was recently, somebody knew the Twisted Nose brand, which is amazing. But actually, we're predominantly B2B. Our client base is purposefully diverse. So we've done that entirely because I think you can be more creative. If you go and work for an SAP technology business, and then you go to work for a company that has their distributors for culinary brands, for example. They're completely different, and providing that you spend that diligence at the start really learning about their audiences and not just trying to roll out the same thing for everybody, I think that you can bring things that you learn from one sector to another. And another area that I personally love is anything around engineering, because my father had an engineering company. So it's an area that I feel really comfortable in, and an area where I think many businesses in the UK have invested in brand and marketing. So we go into a business, we can create
those engineering businesses, the people that make ball bearings. We sometimes miss those companies that actually, their products are kind of at the heart of the everyday things that we use, and they're, I once had a client call them unsexy businesses, and some people have different labels for them in manufacturing, engineering, but I think it is one of those sectors. You're so right. They often massively underinvest in marketing, because actually, really, in their sectors and they're known. They are the provider. It's like you take a company like YKK, the Zip guys. I mean, we kind of forget, literally how big these organizations actually are. Just creating small, simple pieces of equipment, and whether it be, ball bearings or chips or whatever. It's,
And I think, interestingly, I think that Dyson has sort of changed the perception of engineering, because it is engineering, but for predominantly consumers. But I think the push in education in those areas as well, I think, is making it much more attractive now. And then comes this bit where I really believe we are just consumers at work. So we don't walk into an office or work from home and suddenly think, give me dull information because I'm now in a B2B zone. It's just not happened. So if you can do something that's a bit memorable and creative, or make someone smile, or communicate some interesting detail about what they're doing, but in a way that's easy to read and doesn't alienate them. And those are the things where I think we can make the biggest difference. And that's ultimately what we love, is when we can actually see what we're doing is positively impacting a business.
Yeah, and I'm just laughing because you said about humour then, because Linda Harvey's just commented and said, we've all got a bottle of gin under our desk. At least we've got an excuse, which is brilliant. And Dan Jesse, an old snowboarding pal of mine, who also does a little bit of agency work as well. He with a web business. He's an incredible story. He loved it. So yeah, big shout out to Dan as well. So I wanted to continue the conversation now around creativity, and I think that the example you gave is a really important one, because I think a lot of agency founders should go back to their businesses and challenge. And some businesses are more creative and some are more innovative, I would say, in our world of design and technology. And I think that it may be that some are more innovative than maybe, and some are more creative. But there was a really great example, and in fact, someone had messaged me earlier on LinkedIn today. So I'm going to sort of name check and embarrass her with a story, which was because it just was like one of those bits of serendipity. So Annette Cushing used to run strategy in my agency. And so hello, Annette, if you're listening. Hopefully she is. We haven't spoken for quite a few years now since the business sold, and she was actually a fellow shareholder as well. And we had a big pitch come in with a drinks firm. It was a company called Argento Wines, so Argentinian wines. So it's always a bit stressful when you get a brief in for a pitch, because you've always got less than 2 weeks, and I guess you've only got to watch some of Rob Mayhew's TikTok sketches to see what life is like in those scenarios. But short amount of time trying to come up with a response, and it's hard trying to do that and do your full-time job. But so Annette was using creativity to make the whole process fun. So what Annette did was she went out and she bought Argentinian wine. She went out and bought Argentinian tapas. She bought food. She got a playlist from Argentina. And we had this. I remember I think we had to meet at the end of the day because it was the only time we could do our sort of pitch preparation. So it was like 5 o'clock at night, and rather than us all moaning because we were going to have to work late on another pitch, she made the whole thing, a creative, fun experience. So we just, and there she'd come up with these fun facts about Argentina, which we then later integrated into our pitch. And so I think that creativity doesn't have to stop just with the pitch itself. It could be the pitch planning. It could be every day your team meetings. It could be, I mean, have you got any other examples like that? I'll put you on the spot a little bit,
Well, it's interesting. The whole pitch thing is really interesting, and it's really interesting from sector to sector within our world, whether it's digital or brand. So I say on the whole, we won't do any creative pitching. But everybody's use of the term pitching means something differently, I think. So sometimes it can just be about putting lots of effort into something. Sometimes it can be actually going and producing, some kind of direction, creative direction to show people what they're doing. So a few years ago, many years ago, we did used to do creative pitching, but we would always do it a little bit like your brilliant tool where you're qualifying leads. Okay, so what are our actual chances of getting this, and therefore should we do anything? And we make the decision based on there. But because we're predominantly on this brand or brand campaign road, I suppose, everything we do starts with the sort of strategy and the discovery, and the minute the client isn't going to spend the time with you for you to give you that insight, it's really hard to be able to offer something that is going to solve the creative challenge that they're briefing out. So we will always try and do a bit more of a sideways look at it, and sometimes we've gone in and said, we don't do this unless you're going to spend the time with us to do this, and these are the reasons why. And sometimes actually being that bullish about it and explaining why has got us in the door, which has actually made them think, oh, do we really want someone who's not asking any questions to just present us with something creative? Or other times we spend the time on that strategy bit or a story. So what story can we play back? And we will have a creative brainstorm here. What story will we play back to people to help them understand what we might be able to bring to life for them? But the sort of incentivizing people and making things fun, I love that idea, and I love that story and that way of doing things. I think it's brilliant, but I think it's about trying to send things to people to impress them before it even gets to a pitch stage. So if you're super focused on who you want your clients to be, what can you do to get in front of them even before that pitch is coming up? And it's trying to qualify and see whether that's worth it financially. Because I mean, that bit that we did, that whole journey, that cost us quite a bit of money and time to do, but it was worth it. So what else can you do? So sometimes we did do another one where we invented a competitor. So a client thought they wanted a brand for a new range of bikes that they were bringing out, and but they didn't want to invest in it because it was being run by the financial directors, the CFO in the business. So they weren't sure what they wanted, but they knew that there was an opportunity around some BMXs. So we created a brand and a deck and said, okay, so you don't want creative pitching here, you're not willing to invest in it. So what we have done is we've just done a sweep of the competition out there, so you can make a judgment on whether you want to invest in the brand or not. And we showed them their perfect competitor, and we showed who they were sponsoring, what their shops looked like, what their merchandise was, all of that. And they said, we're not going to create a brand, we're just going to buy that company. And then we were able to do the big reveal. But that did have a bit, but it had a backlash, because they said, you basically stood here and lied to us for half an hour.
Really?
And yeah, one of them did. And thankfully, so I'm quite rubbish at lying. And it was in a darkened room, which I think helped. but one of the guys just said that he was amazed that I could lie so blatantly to him for half an hour. So I thought it was really good, but it didn't have the well, it did, and it didn't.
There is a lesson here that sometimes if you take a risk, you know, the risk is it could backfire on you, but sometimes when you take a risk, right, you get the biggest rewards. And I suppose you just again have to calculate that, and probably, you know, I mean, that for me sounds like it was worth. Well, did you win the business?
So we won other business for them, but not that.
Okay.
But they didn't do it at all. So it wasn't because we didn't win it. It was because they didn't do it at all. So it's a slightly different situation. But what you were saying about what you did at Blue Halo, I think that when we did the whole journey thing, and when we've done other things together, it's actually quite a team building event then anyway. If you look at it, okay, so is this really worth the effort? Yes, I think it is. And particularly if it's an existing client that's maybe at risk, because I think that everybody, even if you're not being complacent as an agency, and even if you're really trying to be proactive all the time, I think there's a natural turnover, isn't there, of agencies that businesses will use. So I think that just being able to almost reinvent yourself or do something, and that can be whether you're sending them something because you know it's someone's birthday or an anniversary of the time you've worked together and put together something fun or something like that, then it just reminds them why you're nice to work with.
I mean, it's so funny. It's almost like you were in the meeting I was in this morning. And if they're listening, they'll probably be laughing now, because I have a presentation on this very subject that I do with clients, and it is all about. We talk about, you know, clients a lot, but a lot of agencies that I work with and that are out there work on, you know, helping their clients experience, but they don't really work on their own clients experience. And I think what you just said is so true. You know, there's not enough persona work done around your own clients. There's not enough integration between your agency and the client, whether it be through team building, through learning. And we have covered this over many podcasts, I think, but client experience to me is so important. And I think, as you rightly say, going into a difficult time like now, it's really, really important that that basically that, you know, people focus on making sure that client experience is there, because it adds value to the relationship. It's not always about the work, it's sometimes about the periphery side of things. You know, and so I think what you say is so true. And also, so we sort of covered then around, you know, the subject of, yes, eventually all clients go. And then when a client goes, always someone new comes in. And that new person coming in often has their own people, has their own agency. And as much as we benefit when a client leaves us, often the client will take us with them if we've done a good job, if they built trust with us. But actually, it's the new inbound client coming in that actually we often, you know, neglect or forget. And I see this a lot. And I think there's almost like an early, and I love your story, because in a way you were aware of that red flag. You know, clearly it was a big client, clearly it was an important time for you to retain clients. And I think, you know, if anyone ever listening gets wind of a client going, don't just sit there and wait, you know, for that person to start to ask you to come in and meet with them. Like, start the engagement, you know, before they've started, you know, and when they have, get in there first and make sure that, you know, you come up with a plan to show that client that, you know, all of the great work you've done, and that, you know, and just watch out and don't make any mistakes for 6 months, because often they're waiting for you to slip up so that you can. So we talked about, you know, I love the example of yours of trying to retain a client that was, you know, coming in new. I've talked about the example of, you know, making creativity more in the business. And you've talked about the example there also about, you know, about being creative in pitches. I think there's other creativity. And we actually talked briefly about the Carrie Rose interview I did, where she was using creativity to hyper target, you know, and almost along the lines you said of their, actually being able to target a client by showing and demonstrating your creativity and doing a campaign on them.
And we've done that before as well, and it has worked, which is also brilliant. And again, it comes down to that qualification part, I think, of who do you know there, and what insight can you get? Because if you don't get enough of that insight, I think it can be you might misjudge it. And I know that, especially, sort of 8 years ago or 10 years ago, you're sort of very close to the last recession. I think a lot of businesses were really skeptical of anyone that was looking to be too flashy, spending money on stuff that might be considered irrelevant. So there really is that fine line between when it's right and not to do something a bit more expressive. But we have done a lot of packaged direct mail things very specifically for prospects that we're trying to win. That's slightly harder for some businesses now because of the amount of people working from home. So how do you ever actually get something in somebody's hands anymore? But if you can, it can make an amazing impression. And a couple of examples, and we got an opportunity through one of my Cactus Group people. We got an opportunity to pitch to some consultants in my B2B is what we mostly do. Our passion is food and drink. So we have these lovely clients sort of on the side that we look after, mostly because we eat and drink their products. And she got us an amazing opportunity. And they wanted to do the meetings remotely. So we just tried to bring a little bit of theatre to it. And we put lots of effort into understanding the market and making suggestions and looking at competitor gaps and things like that to show how this product could be launched and brought to market. And then we had boxed a bottle of Twisted Nose, but before they got to it, there was lots of different cards showing all of the success stories in sales, etc., and growth that business had. But we wouldn't let them open it until we were at exactly the point we wanted to in the Zoom sort of presentation. So you can be a bit more theatrical, I think. And then we won Virgin Atlantic Cargo through sending a piece of fun direct mail. We're in the dairy studios. And do you remember, well, the Cowshed products are still available, but they used to have really cheeky names that were really funny, and now they've taken all that away and made it bland and boring. I'm probably not allowed to say that, am I? Sorry.
I don't know. It's part of the clique. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway, we packaged this thing up, and there was a little game where you catapulted a cow. These are really cheesy things. There was a bar of chocolate. We can help you raise the bar in your brand campaigns. And what else did we have? I think all stuff showing that we could bring value to them, but in a very, very fun way. And it was a whole box. They love chocolate. There's loads of chocolate in it. And so just a whole box of loveliness that they got to open that made us stand out and made them think, who are they then? And we won them, and we were on a big retainer with them for many years. And COVID, unfortunately, scuppered it, but it's been great.
But I mean, there's a great example there where if you have a brand that is a challenger brand or has a persona itself that is playful, then that's what they want to see, and they want to see that you share values, that you have empathy and sympathy with their brand approach. And I think that's important. And I've seen this, where people have had opportunities to pitch for Virgin and gone in with really boring presentations and missed the whole point of actually seeing them as a big company and not actually seeing them as someone who is looking for someone who will challenge and be playful. We once pitched to Paddy Power, Tina, over in Dublin, and this was before, really, I suppose. Do you remember there was that phase when people had those picture frames and everyone would put photos on the photo frames, and it became this kind of thing for many years? Well, we couldn't take the whole team to Dublin, so what we did was we basically took we took over a photo frame with all our pictures on. And then when we finished the pitch, they weren't looking, we plugged in the photo frame in the corner of their room, and it had basically messages from all of our team saying how much we wanted to work with Paddy Power. And then we left the room and didn't draw attention to it. And then about a week later, the prospect rang up and was laughing because they were like, all week we've been looking at this photo frame, not realizing what it was, and then we kind of figured it out. It was you guys, and listen, we love it, and you've won the business. And so I think the line that Pete and I hear a lot when we go into board meetings and our consulting meetings and we go through pipeline and we say, right, how did you go through the one deals, and we say, do you know why you won that deal? I can't tell you the amount of times the answer from the agency founder is, they simply said that we did more than everybody else. And I don't think it's always more as in the volume of work, but they did more as in they showed they wanted the business more. Yeah, that really does come across.
Yeah, I mean, we lost an opportunity a few weeks ago, which I was really gutted because I'd had lots of conversations up to then. I'm quite instinctive with these things, and they had told us that we were leading the pack and they only really wanted to work with us. This is the marketing director as opposed to the board of directors, and we challenged them, and we so it did. So I took a leaf out of Alex Holliman's book. And when he won Greenpeace, and he did a video to them about why he wanted to work with them, and I thought that's genius. And Alex is brilliant. So I didn't do a video because I didn't really like that, and I haven't quite stepped that far out of my comfort zone. But what I did do is I did a voiceover of the presentation that we did, so that if I wasn't going to get to present it to the board, it could at least be in my tone of voice. And I wanted to just try and, I think when it got to the end before the case studies, I sort of said something like, it is now time to switch me off, put me on mute and have a look at our case studies. But we lost it. And I as much as we try to find out why we won, we also obviously want to find out why we didn't. And we were told that the agency that they chose to work with, I mean, they were more specialized in this very specific field. So that's one thing which we can't match. But the other thing that was that they were more profound. And that's all the detail they would give me. So, of course, since then, all I keep thinking about is, okay, how can we be more profound? And I have really been thinking about that. And I think that in today's economic environment and what's coming up, I think profoundness, if there's such a word, is around trying to find that missing thing that they may have overlooked, that you could see objectively, that a competitor might be doing that they're not, and they just haven't realized, or looking at something from an external point of view. So if you've got business A and B, as an outsider knowing nothing is special about those businesses, what do you see of business A compared to this prospect? Is there something profound you can bring out of that's really personal to them?
Do you know what? It was only about, I feel like it was just the start of the pandemic. I was with a client who lost a pitch to someone who I know very well, another agency owner, a very much larger agency actually they were pitching against, and I can't remember the exact word, but it wasn't profound, but it was almost like the other agency had come up with a compelling idea. There's something, it was something that just it was a guess the word they used, game changer. They'd come up with a game changing idea, and I think that sometimes that's what we're in the bigger agencies. Once I sold the business and we were going, we'd have full dedicated teams of planners working on pitches. I mean, those were the insights from the personas that we were looking for. We were looking for those, those kind of marketing hooks that would come from those personas that would bring something new in to the table. In fact, that does remind me, by the way, of a story that when we talk about creativity, one of those pitches that we were in was actually for let's call it a luxury. I won't name them today, but a luxury car manufacturer, and basically the agency went and hired the car, so they drove around all weekend in this super luxurious car, so that they could have loads of video content with them, also so they could experience the car. And again, I was having this conversation earlier on about it's the old Ogilvy thing about the importance of buying from your customers, shopping with your customers, understanding their business. But what they did was they went in to try and buy one of these luxury cars and realized that it was still done on an old-fashioned order pad. So they asked the sales guy for a copy of the order pad, and the brief was to sell 200 of these cars. And so they went back and got the graduates to fill out, handwrite 200 orders for this car, and then they covered the whole room in the pitch. So here today because
Brilliant.
we have to create. We know we have to create 200 of these orders, and so it's all of these small things that often make a big difference. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today as well, just lastly on the subject of creativity in agencies, because it's. And how are you guys now remote? Are you working sort of semi-remote? How's that working with you in this pandemic?
So interestingly, we're predominantly, not forcefully, in the office. I think that people have options, and we've always been able to work from home, and people do work from home as and when they need. So particularly if you need to get your head down and focus on things. So it's a little bit role specific, I would say. From
so you're flexible, but you have a culture where people want to come in the office. I take it sounds like.
And I think that the thing that's really interesting is I didn't realize how hard I would find it during the pandemic, because I think it's the people here that motivate me to do what I do each day. And without them being here, I kind of feel like a bit of a loose end, really. I just feel like I have no purpose, and that sounds ridiculously melodramatic. And I'm quite self-motivated, but I found it really quite hard. And I don't know what that is, whether it's validation or whatever. But the most important thing is it's that learning piece. So the bit that we miss out on working remotely is learning. And when my very first agency, because I'm ancient enough, was a big agency which had a typesetting department before Macs. It was like just on the cusp of when Macs were coming in. Typesetting, drawing boards they still had, and copywriting, and I went and worked in every one of those departments, and it was amazing to have like all that experience. And for the younger people in the team here, how do they learn? Because there are those moments when you don't just have a Zoom call or a Slack call, because it's a momentary thing, or you overhear somebody on the phone to someone, and you learn what's happened. So it's about flexibility, absolutely, and all of us can work from home when we need to, but equally, I've been a bit overwhelmed really in the sort of culture, the sense of togetherness I'm feeling from the team recently, and they're just amazing, and they work brilliantly together, and I'm just really, really lucky. And I don't know how easy it would be if we were remote all of the time. It would take a lot of effort.
It seems to be to me that every kind of agency culture finds its way. For some, they're vehemently fully no office, fully remote, and they deliver service wonderfully well, as good as anybody. And they've got a way to overcome the training, the development, they delivery, everything is dealt with. And then you've got other agencies that are the other way, where maybe because of the demographic of the team, maybe being younger, they want to be with their colleagues, they want the learning, they want to be in the office, and maybe actually not even just the age. I mean, I've seen other cultures where they just want to be with each other because they're all really good friends. They're the same people at home they are at work, and they enjoy spending time with each other. So I genuinely think, when I reflect now on everything I'm seeing, there is no right or wrong. There just is, right? And I think, it's a question of the age. That I know that the guys from Jago use that thing, you be you. It's almost like the business be the business. I mean, I think you have to find your own groove with it. And I don't think anyone should really judge either way. But as long as your team buy into that approach and they're happy with it. I think the last example I wanted to give about creativity and a reminder was I've got someone that I work with who is a sort of semi-hybrid team. And they had a very important client come in the other day who was potentially someone who could be a big client. And the team wasn't in the office. It was like there was only like 20-30% of people in. Now, from my point of view, I feel like that was a brilliant opportunity then to inspire the team. Okay, be sensitive to commuting and to, you know, to some of those things that you know, why people are working remotely, but to get the team in for an important client, you know, to show actually the depth and the skills and the culture and feel the vibe that, you know, you can't get that if you walk into an empty studio, right? So, and all I'm trying to say here is that we used to have this brilliant thing, which was basically a set piece, so that whenever a prospect came to the office, everyone suddenly jumped to our greatest piece of work, right? So no one would ever. I remember the first ever tour I did at the office for a prospect, and basically I think all the coders were like working on black and white screens doing nothing that looked important to anybody unless you were an engineer. And I think the designers were doing the, you know, probably some legwork for something really internal project or something. And, you know, and then after I learned the lessons, so what we did was we then set piece those journeys so that whenever someone stood up, everyone suddenly jumped onto Tottenham Hotspur, the NFL, Andy Murray, BlackBerry, whatever the brands we worked with in the day. And I think, again, creativity through the studio, if you've got one, and you have, and even subtleties in the studio. Like we used to have design boards, like right now they would have said design trends, you know, 2023, 24. Right. So we would be saying to clients, oh, we're always thinking 6 months to a year ahead, because most of the work we do, it doesn't go live for 6 to 12 months. So we have to look at typography, look at photography, color changes. In fact, a guy the other day made me realize that was because I started out in the clothes business. In the clothes business, you always sell, you know, you're selling spring, summer now. And I know maybe it always made me think ahead. I think that's probably where it came from. But I think creativity needs to be pervasive through the business as well, right? And through the experience that happened, not, you know, through everyday occurrences, not just through business and clients, is what I'm saying, but externally.
And I think also we have to remember that for the majority of businesses, certainly our clients, working with us should be the most fun bit they do. So keep remembering that bit as well. I think is like super important, because our business isn't like them. Although we won a recent client where our values are so aligned that when we were writing their vision and their values, it was like a piece of cake, because it is just so much like us. When you get that kind of connection, then working is just a joy when it's like that. It's amazing. But yeah. And are we not going to talk about boxing?
We are. We've got literally probably about 5 minutes to do it in before we upset Dan and overrun too much time. Well, the big topic really for me at the moment is I feel like there's not enough time invested by founders in it, but you know, in their own kind of like resilience. And I've just been putting some things together the last couple of days around, you know, how to prepare for downturns. You talked about 2009, and so I guess just to tee this up, I just wanted to talk to you really about the importance of, for you know, around fitness to help give you the kind of mental resilience of running a business, because it's not easy, right? It is full of challenges. And so, you know, you rang me the other day and said you were looking for a fight.
Not quite.
Not quite, no, but you know, you were looking for someone to box against, and then we realized that we both have the same trainer at boxing.
Yeah.
The wonderful Matt Goddard.
Yeah, we have to name check him, otherwise he'll punch our lights out.
And he literally got like another 2 million followers this weekend. This guy is like becoming, I mean, if everyone follows the Boxing Locker, I think that's his Instagram handle. He's on TikTok, but find him, track him down. He's doing incredibly well. And we have this, and the joke is, everyone listening, is there's a leaderboard up in the gym, and basically Tina is ahead of me on almost, I think, bar one of the categories is, and actually it's not just me, it's probably most of the 30-year-olds on the board as well. So
but I think we were talking earlier, so fitness for me is really important. Now, I don't know if this is a medical thing, I'm probably making this up, but I feel like my memory is better for things, and I think more clearly if I'm exercising regularly. And so I counter my boxing with some yoga and dog walking. And we've got a beautiful area we live in, haven't we, with for dog walking, which is amazing. And I think it's really important. And when it's really easy to get out of the habit really quickly, and I don't think you necessarily realize the physical impact, and particularly as you get older as well, and until it's too late, and it's a gradual thing, so you don't realize that it affects how your brain works. And when however much I might not feel like going and sweating it out in 32 degrees or whatever, I never go and think, I wish I hadn't done that. I always think afterwards, I'm really glad I did. And I think that it does make you more resilient. I mean, it took me a really long time to realize that if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after everybody else here and a business. And I like healthy food to balance my gin and wine love, and boxing and yoga, and it's really important. It's really important.
I mean, I like my food too, but I think I like it a bit too much. Whereas you seem to go for the more sort of gastronomy. Can't say the word. You like your haute cuisine. It's I've seen your Instagram post. You certainly know where to eat. In fact, I come to you now for all my restaurant recommendations.
It doesn't have to be fancy. It just needs to taste good. I don't care if it's fancy. It can be street food. It just needs to taste amazing. That's what I love.
You do. I know you do. So I think that the fitness is important. And I also think that agency founders should be doing more to encourage their teams to again find common ground, not forcing anyone to do things they don't want to do here, guys, but find common ground. But the client I was with yesterday, they just did the 3 peaks with a large percentage of their team. Again, I think when you're doing sometimes more challenges as well, I think the challenges are good because they're physical challenges that actually again help with the mental, the sort of more physical mental challenges that when you come back into the workplace, you just have a better coping mechanism to do. And it's funny, I look back now and I realize that some of those things have probably kept me sane in the most challenging times. And I think we all have an obligation as agency founders to do more with our teams as well and get them doing things. Do you agree with that? I mean, is it hard to get people to do things collaboratively like that?
I don't think so. I think I found COVID really difficult because of that, because you couldn't do your normal routine fitness thing. So you had to be really self-disciplined to do it at home. And I think there was a really big split between those who were really good at doing that and those who drank more wine in the garden. And I wasn't self-disciplined with exercise at all. So I think that coming together after COVID was so important. We'd missed our 10th birthday anniversary as Valiant. So the first thing we did was that, which we had the most amazing experience together. And I don't know whether we did do an inflatable 5K once, but I have to say most of the things that we've done haven't been that focused on fitness, more on having fun. But most people here go out for a walk at lunchtime, so it's definitely not a chained to your desk, you've got to work. And one of the things I really want to do more of is walking meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say to you, like we do our walk and talks, our events. I mean, I don't know if have you been on one before?
No, because I think
I've got one in Hampshire coming up. I've got one from my house happening soon, so you need to come to that one because it's close by. But we've got the Hangers Way, you've got some lovely walks nearby, and they are quite challenging as well. But also get to spend large amounts of time with clients and also your team as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I just think that the culture. I'm probably not allowed to say this either, but the culture where you rock up to your agency and there's drugs on your desk in the morning and then you'd be drinking all through the night or whatever, because that was what people did back then to get through, it's just gone. It has to be about well-being. And rightfully, and I'm glad, I'm not saying that I'm missing that at all. It's much healthier workspace.
Yeah, but it is funny because, when we had our agency, like we used to have to, we did work long hours. We were winning great brands back then, and it took extraordinary sometimes teamwork. And actually the team, I think I still say it, but the team loved, no one was forced to work late. People wanted to work on stuff they knew they could win and it would be exciting. But the amount of nights that we did on Red Bull and Ferrero Rocher, not realizing the London agencies had other substances supporting their all-nighters is another level. But anyway, I think that maybe I don't know. Maybe that's an old era now. I'm not sure, but
think
yeah,
it is.
the YouTube algorithm will go down too well with that. Dan will be probably sitting there now for the next 3 weeks getting this podcast approved for all sorts of substance.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. You didn't swear. That's the most important thing, I think.
No, exactly.
We'll talk about, I know, but I can't even say it because if I say it, we will definitely get banned. But yeah. Anyway, I'm not even going to say the words. Listen, thank you so much. I can't believe it. I always say this: the time flies on these podcasts. We've been talking for over an hour, but thank you so much for sharing that story. And I really hope it has inspired people listening. And if you've come in late, go back to the beginning, listen to that story, and just think about your own businesses and how could you bring in more creativity or more innovation to and also to make the workplace a bit more fun and a bit more exciting, and and just try and bring a bit more joy to everyone's lives in the business, right, and the clients as well.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Tina, for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And just once again, a bit of an apology for any background noise. I know I had a helicopter flying overhead because it's so hot. We're outside. Tina's definitely got fan issues, and Dan was muting him in the background. But there's a little background noise, but hopefully you still got to hear all of the great content from today's episode. And for episode 61, that is a